Hi Amar, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. How about you? We're in the middle of a triple header, man.
I know, and I feel like we took a massive break. I'm really sorry, everyone, but
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
we've taken a big break. But that does mean that we've got a huge amount to talk about today.
yeah.
Can't
There
wait.
goes. Get ready for my verbal diarrhea now, everybody. Come on.
Yes, yes. Let's start that verbal diarrhea because I think the Bahrain weekend was definitely a case of the good, the bad, and the Red Bull ugliness.
Oof.
So let's start with the good. Amar, Oscar Piastri wins the Bahrain Grand Prix. So which bit of the McLaren aerodynamic anatomy allowed
Am
this to
I
happen? Yeah.
gonna? Oh, I knew you were going to lead with that. Listen, guys, I have had no problem giving credit where credit is due. I've maintained that, it. I've been criticized for having a TBD on George Russell and Oscar Piastri. Guess what, guys? You win. My TBD on Oscar Piastri is officially gone. He has proven this season that in all the four races, he has been the best driver on the grid. Of course, having the best car, but also having the best drive. And there's nothing I can say. I mean, there's nothing anyone can do to criticize him. And candidly, I mean, I know he's second in the championship. He should actually be first because he had a short shot P2 in Australia and just by stroke of bad luck, really. And that is bad luck, guys. It's not an if, but, whatever. There are no qualifiers for that. He should be the championship leader. And by the way, it looks every bit that way too. So kudos to Oscar Piastri. Also makes for a boring sort of front runner, man. Like this is I don't know about those of us in the headlines and the content business. I'm not sure a McLaren 1-2 throughout the season is really going to help any of us. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think Lando Norris is helping you on that front by making sure that there is almost never a McLaren 1-2. Um, but before we come to Lando, I have to take a little bit of umbrage with the notion that he's a boring champion. Like Oscar Piastri is clearly the re-embodiment of your favourite Kimi Raikkonen.
Yes, here you go again with the gaslighting, man. The word boring was not my term there. What I said is if you have a McLaren 1-2 throughout the year, this ain't going to be fun. By the way, there's a really good meme on social media where Oscar Piastri's reaction after not winning versus winning is basically the same. So there you go. I mean, I do have a little bit of a case here in that I would love to see some more joy from Oscar, but we're being tongue in cheek here. He would be a deserving champion if he wins that. But guess what, Ches? There's a long list of drivers that we would deem more deserving that wouldn't even get a sniff at the championship. One that I support and one that you support too. So I don't know, man. It's a bit of a mixed feeling.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I quite like Oscar. I think he's doing a good job. And you know what? He's just like Kimmy. He has the same reaction whether he wins or loses. He is literally the Keanu Reeves of the Formula One driver lineup in 2025. I love it. But also the great thing about Oscar is that all of the things that we said that he couldn't do over the past 3 seasons, year on year, he's managed to iron them out, and it's unreal. First season, we said, okay, tire management's a big fat problem. He comes back the second season, tire management is demonstrably better. He's able to keep pace with his illustrious teammate, and although he can't quite keep up in qualifying, actually in the races he's much more on it, and that Baku win was a testament to that, I thought. um, then we said yesterday, last year, look, his qualifying pace isn't right there, and this guy right here said, man, that's a big fat hurdle to try and overcome, because if you haven't got pace in Formula One, then what the heck have you got? Well, it turns out that Oscar Piastri can even learn pace. Now, I do think the car has changed a little bit, and it started to come a little bit further towards him. There's a lot of rear tire management going on, and his smooth style seems to allow that to work. But this is what two qualifyings now. He's been ahead. So
Yeah.
China, both sprint and Grand Prix, and Bahrain, he's been ahead, and there was only what a mistake into turn two, I think, in Japan that cost him pole because he was purple sector 2 and sector 3 there as well. So the pace is definitely there now. Even against Lando, it seems to have the Norris a little bit rattled if he needed any more rattling.
Okay. All right. Pump the
But
brakes on that a little
we
bit.
will pump
Come
the
on.
brakes because we haven't finished the good. The other good is the other TBD that you just mentioned there. We need to give George Russell some props as well. Let's just get that out of the way now.
All right.
George
All right. So,
Russell with
yes.
a car that was essentially dying on him as he drove along, manages to keep Lando Norris behind him for lap after lap to claim second.
Wow.
Tell me why it's still TBD, man.
Well, it is. It's still TBD on George. I mean, I need to see some race wins to for that to happen. But it is more close to not being a TBD. By the way, the only thing I could think would have, which was funny and both cynical, is that if the Mercedes had actually gone out, right? I mean, in the lead up to this race, I watched everything about how George had, had jumped into Lewis's car back in 2020 and, literally had, three different times where he could have won the race, only to be really screwed up by Mercedes themselves, really. Um, and that would have been funny had the car just sort of went out all of a sudden. But props to him. Look, I mean, he is maximizing what Mercedes have. I think there's beauty in coming into the season with no expectations at all. Mercedes have no such expectations of winning anything this year. Whether that actually changes over the course of the season, that remains to be seen. But they certainly seem like the second quickest car on average, and frankly, not too far from McLaren on Saturdays. And credit to George Russell for being Mr. Saturday, one of our top three qualifiers on the grid, right? So, again, no criticism. I've never had any criticism of George. In fact, you could. It's only that those of you that are George fanatics. What do you guys want to call yourselves? I don't know, what is it, Russellites or whatever, have come at me with that. But brilliant race, brilliant four races for him too. And oh, by the way, just so we have this clear too, his teammate isn't too shabby either, right? And I would actually argue that he is having the better season, this race notwithstanding.
Explain
But
that to me.
props to
Just
George
explain
too.
that to me. How is
I mean,
how
look,
is Kimi Antonelli having a better season than George Russell?
because Kimi Antonelli is just new, man. He goes to school. What are you talking about? He has never been in. Then he jumped straight from F4 to F2.
Oh yeah,
Or yeah,
via 15,000
okay.
kilometers in Formula One cars beforehand.
Cool. Okay, but all right, come on. Let's be honest, man. Look at how he's been driving. Did you see how he overtook Max? Oh my God! Did you see the move he put there? I mean, these are some excellent move from the guy who is, you wouldn't even have expected anything. So, look, I don't want to take anything
how is that a better drive than George Russell?
because the expectations are even lower. Just like you had no expectations for George to be anywhere in
But
the.
Kimi isn't TBD. Kimi's there, right? Kimi's like, there's
No,
no doubt about
I
Kimi.
never said anything about Kimmy being TBD or not. He's not even figured in that conversation, Shez.
Is he TBD or not?
Kimmy is not even in a conversation about TBD or
But
not.
you can't
He
answer
is
that
like,
question.
I'm saying he's like four levels down right now because he's a rookie on the
All right.
grid. He has nothing. You can't. So me putting him in a TBD conversation
Yeah.
should be insulting to you as a George Russell fan. I will tell you that. So I don't know if you really want to go there, but I'm not saying. What I'm saying is George Russell has had a great drive, but you don't need to look far to
It's not
see
just a
who is
great
arguably
drive.
having a
It's not just a great drive.
four drives.
Four drives, correct.
Yeah.
He's been off the podium once this season so far.
Absolutely. But George Russell has been in Formula One for how many years now?
What's that got to do with it?
And he's
But
beaten
you,
a,
no, no,
a,
but
a
you're,
world
you, but
champion,
you,
no?
you,
7 times.
you said that Kimi Antonelli has had a better season than George
I would
Russell.
say arguably, yeah, like I
So
said,
what's your argument? To give me the argument.
arguably a better season because he has finished in the points. He's been in the top 5 for the most part, right? And then of course this race in Bahrain, it's not his fault. It was just pure luck and bad timing. Not my words, by the way. Team principal Toto Wolff. He said it.
Where did Kimi qualify?
He did he qualified P4, but then he had a grid place, right?
Yeah,
Penalty, so P5.
where did George qualify before
Dude, I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing with. I don't know where he argued. P20, and then he came back from 20 to
P2,
P2.
but quantifiably, you can't argue that he's having a better season than George Russell. That doesn't.
So
That
this is
doesn't
what
even
you
add
can.
up.
I know what you're doing here, Shez. I get what you're saying. He has the better season, and here's why. If you started the season, who would you have had ahead of
George.
the two drivers? Okay, who would you have said had a better shot at podiums among the two drivers?
George.
There you go. So George Russell meeting expectations. Kimi
So
Antonelli,
what?
no
Yeah. So what
expectations,
has he done?
and
How many
he
podiums does
has
he have?
he doesn't. We never
All right.
thought about him having podiums. Why would you say that?
Okay.
I'm
So in a
okay.
car that his teammate is getting podiums in,
Yeah,
Kimi Antonelli is also, I would argue, meeting expectations for what he
I
should be
think
able to do in that car. So he's not exceeding them. He's just doing
not at all.
what you'd expect
Not
him to
so.
do.
So if he's meeting expectations, then George is underperforming, man, because George has been with the team for more than 4 years.
But
He
he
should
can.
be that far ahead.
Okay,
He
Ammar,
isn't that far ahead, man. I mean,
we're gonna have to again explain both to you and the viewers that with a car that cannot win a race, you cannot win a race.
ah,
Look at Max Verstappen. He
okay,
went from winning a race in Japan to
right.
finishing what, seventh in Bahrain. So,
I
so
sure.
so are you going to tell me that Max Verstappen now isn't that great because he couldn't win the Bahrain Grand Prix? Because
I don't know. I'm not ready to talk about Max just yet. What I'm just trying to say is George Russell has had a great start to the season, but you don't have to look far enough to see who also had an arguably greater start to the season for where he is at. And here is the problem with the argument you're making. I'm saying that I'm judging the season being better than the other guy because their starting points are different. I had no expectations. I mean, look at Yuki Tsunoda struggling with the Red Bull. Look at what Lawson went through. Look at what some of the other rookies have done. Some have outperformed really well, and some haven't. And but what Kimi is doing, he's consistently up there. And even in this race in Bahrain, he was at P5 at one point, and it was just they put him on the softs. Safety car came in. It was bad timing. And then he was out of the points, and then he had to kind of fight back and didn't have
yeah,
enough time. But look at so Kimi Antonelli's only had 4 races, Shez. So you wouldn't have even predicted anything for him at all. Like him finishing in the top 10 would have been great, but he has been right there. He's qualified ahead of a 7-time world champion. That's why I'm saying he's having as good or maybe even arguably a better season than George. That's all.
so that's all is quite a neat way to sum up something that is illogical because
Well, that's your logic, not
well,
mine.
but there is no argument. Like George Russell has quantifiably performed better across these races, and let me
As
tell
he
you,
should.
and let me tell you something about why Kimi Antonelli had to pit again after the safety car. It's because he chewed the crap out of his tires. He didn't
Okay.
have an understanding of what his tires could do. It's really easy to be really
It's his
fast.
fourth race.
Amar, it's really easy to be really fast when you don't care about what your tyres are doing. Anyone
Sure.
can do that. He was the only
Sure.
driver in the top 10 that needed 3 stops to get to the end of
Sure.
that race with a safety car. So I'm not taking anything
Sure.
away from Kimi. He is doing
Are you?
a stand-up job,
Sounds like you are,
but
though.
he's not doing a George Russell, who is
And that's not
doing
the
an
argument.
outstanding job in
The
his
argument
car,
is
and I would argue a
not
much better job than
okay.
what Kimi
So
Antonelli is doing currently.
so you're arguing the price of tomatoes, and I'm arguing the price of oranges.
I think you're.
I did not say Kimi Antonelli is better than George. I didn't even say. In fact, you were the one who wanted to put him in that
No, I
conversation
didn't. You
about
did.
TBD or
No,
not.
you
You
did.
asked me the question,
You
but
asked.
you asked me the question about TBD, and the TBD on George Russell is whether he's in the elite, in the top three, in the top five, right? There is no argument to be had about Kimi Antonelli with that because he is nowhere close to he is not even deserving of a conversation there. That's my point. All I'm saying is if we're looking at the 4 races, right? George Russell, excellent season, arguably, and here's I'm going to say this too, the best driver on the grid right now, even over Oscar, because with the card that he has been given, George has outperformed tremendously. Oscar has, yes, but Oscar has had the quickest car on the grid, so of course he would. So I would put Russell number one and Piastri number two. But what I'm saying is, if you're looking for meeting and exceeding expectations, Kimi Antonelli is right there, and only 4 races, Shez. Of course, he's going to be bad on certain things. It's just not going to be there right now.
Okay. Anyway, so the conclusion I want to take from that, Amar, is that even when I'm trying to tell you that George Russell is doing a great job, you still managed to find a way to say that somebody else who isn't doing a better job is doing a better
No,
job.
I
Right.
actually gave
Okay.
him all props. I ranked him number one, best driver this
Very,
season.
yes, very good. After saying that he's not doing as good a job as Kimi Antonelli.
I did not
Anyway,
say that. But okay, you all tell us.
You didn't tell me that he's not doing a better job than Kimi
So
Antonelli.
so Shez, let's do this again. Hear me. I'm going to say this slowly, right? George Russell is exceeding his expectations. Kimi Antonelli is way exceeding his expectation. You see the difference there? This is not about driver comparison. What I'm saying is what Kimi is doing with that Mercedes, certainly a seven-time world champion couldn't do that. Maybe he has some regrets there. So I'm just saying that if you look at the season thus far, Kimi Antonelli is arguably having just as good a season for where his starting point, and they have different starting points. That's all.
Okay, judge, audience, it's over to you. Judge
And let's
what you will from that. Anyway, let's talk about the bad, because if we haven't done that already, we're going to get onto it now anyway. Let's start with the easy one, Lando. Oh, Lando.
not bad. Not bad.
Interesting. Tell me about Lando being not bad.
Look, man, everyone loves dunking on Lando because, and I've heard this from a lot of you that are anti-Lando for some reason, because he told Lewis Hamilton that you had your time with the dominant car and blah blah blah, and he was just, I mean, good God, I mean, Max Verstappen has said all kinds of things over the years. Like, we don't hold that against him at all. At least I don't. Like, I'm done with that Lando Norris comparison. Look, if he has arguably not been in the top three drivers this season. Yes, he had the win in Melbourne, but after that, he's been kind of finding his way. I get it. There's going to be some struggles, and we're acting like after four races, only a quarter of the season done in, like this championship is already decided. So I would just like to say, let's pump the brakes on that. Yes, bad qualifying for Lando, but a very good race overall. Just from where he started and what he needed to do. I will say though, Shez, I'll give you this. You're probably going to come back at me with this. He should have gotten George Russell. And that probably isn't the best thing there. But I wouldn't really say that's bad. I think it's okay for where he started. He needs to fix his qualifying though. Like, in the season's young.
Yeah, I mean the problem with this season is young argument is that Max Verstappen needed to win the first 7 races of last year to win the world championship at the end. Ultimately, like he needed that head start to be able to give him the cushion that he needed to be able to defend it much more serenely towards the end of the season. It was still in jeopardy, right? Lando's squandering those chances, and the problem that I see now is that the guy in the other car is starting to do the things more consistently that Lando should be doing right now. I'll give you a bit of an example. So Lando, this is his quote, right? So he said this when he was asked about how his weekend went. He said, "Look, when you're an athlete, when you're a driver, whatever it is, you just know when things click, when you feel confident, when you feel comfortable." So he says, "I'm confident that I have everything I need and I've got what it takes. I have no doubt about that, but something's not clicking with me and the car." The problem for him, right, is that in isolation, that would be fine. If he was Max Verstappen and his teammate was Liam Lawson, it probably wouldn't matter too much. It would have done on Saturday in Bahrain because he still would have qualified 6th or 7th, which was a problem. But the problem he has is that the guy in the other car in his own team is not doing that right now. Like, where he is struggling with the car balance, Oscar is smooth and it's starting to play to his strengths. And I'm not saying that McLaren are suddenly now building a car for Oscar, but Oscar seems to struggle less with the unpredictability of this car. This is one area, right? So I've got a quick shot of turn 5, 6, and 7, and 8 in Bahrain. So that is, come out of turn 4, you have the quick medium speed corners that head down towards turn 8 before you get to the tricky 9, 10 section, right? So there's a medium speed bit and then there's a big stop as you come round. And in both of those sequences, you can see that the Oscar is just a bit more confident with the throttle pedal. Like, you can maintain a bit more speed through the medium speed corners, and then into that big stop, Lando has to brake harder. He has a big gap between coming off the brake and being confident enough to put his foot on the throttle on the way out, whereas Oscar is much more off the throttle, on the brake, and then there's a nice little Charles Leclerc style overlap on the exit that allows him a bit of stability to be able to put his foot down hard. And you can see in the speed trace for that little bit, both his entry speed and his minimum speed through the corner is just better. They're in the same car. And Lando just isn't able to get that pace out of the car. He's not able to do the things that Oscar is currently able to do. And what we were talking about being just little mistakes are actually a fundamental problem that he is having. And this for me solves a big problem that McLaren have. That's something that we have talked about. And that is that at some point they're going to have to choose a driver to back. On current form, it's not going to be Lando. It's not like, I can't see how it can be him. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, and you look, I look at the same thing that you do. I just have a different opinion of everything that I see. Number one, I've always appreciated Lando being honest, and he's being honest about it, and I don't think there's any problem with that. I mean, my thing is we shouldn't. Well, first of all, Shez, you say I said the season is long, and that is true because it looks like the season will boil down to the two McLaren drivers. I mean, if Bahrain is an example of things to come, maybe Max pulls out the odd race or two, but it does seem like, and we're going to talk about that when Red Bull have emergency meetings, that usually means that there's a problem there. But it is. I mean, the only caveat to all of this, Shez, is the technical directive, and if it does impact McLaren at all. But it looks like the championship is going to be between the two drivers. And that's okay. And look, we're praising Oscar for this stretch, but again, we're just only a quarter of the way through the season. You can't really say that everything is going to be decided very quickly, right? I do think though that McLaren, if they are fearing a Red Bull reprise after Spain, then they would have to pick a driver. In which case, right, you're right, they would have to pick Oscar, but I'd like to give Lando a little bit of time again with this stuff because these things are changing. And what we're seeing, Shez, if the upshot of all of this is a tire management championship now. It really is all about that, right? So there'll be tracks where Lando will have it too. So I'm not.
Where is it easiest to manage your tires from?
From P1.
From P1, and if one of those drivers is out qualifying the other one, that's the driver that's ultimately going to have the advantage come the races.
We are 3 races removed from giving Lando a lot of praise for how he handled the first race of the season in changing conditions and everything. Then when the safety car restarts,
over a month ago,
rain. I understand that, and I know we love to be prisoners of the moment, but that did happen, and he did do a great job there. Not 1, but 2 restarts, and then he had Oscar behind him at one point. He had Max behind him, so he did a good job. So my point with all of this is we shouldn't act like Lando is P10 or something. Yes, he's had a few duds in there, but he's also capable of putting the car in pole consistently. Also,
he has had duds in races where his teammate has not had duds.
Yeah, and
that is the problem that Lando Norris finds himself in, right?
But again, we are.
How does he compete where every little mistake he makes gets punished badly by the guy in the other car? That's a problem.
Yeah. And all that said, Shez, he's still leading the championship, right? So this is why I don't disagree with you, but again, that's why you got to give it more time. That's why this is TBD, Shez.
But he's leading the championship, despite the fact that his closest competitor spun off the road.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But only by 4 points. He should have marched off into the distance by now, but he hasn't done that.
I cannot disagree with that, Shez, but I also think that, again, we just need to hold a little bit of time and space to see how this works out because, if you qualify P1, then chances are you're winning the race, right? I mean, not chances are. You definitely are winning every race thus far. So
this is where I think this is going to happen, right? Is that Oscar will start, I think, to make that decision for McLaren because his performances will mean that they are left with no choice. That's generally how this works out anyway. If you look at any great rivalry, and I don't see Lando and Oscar as a great rivalry, but I do see that there's a bit of a difference well, I mean, they're just not. I mean, you're not going to put them in the same bracket as Senna and Prost, are you? Like, I certainly am not.
When do you see this decision happening? You tell me. I don't think there needs to be
a definite decision. I think it will just happen organically,
Okay, over time.
because I think Oscar will just eke out that gap now, and if the next few races follow the same pattern as the last couple of races, Japan notwithstanding, I think Oscar will start to pull ahead, and then that will just make the decision for McLaren.
I agree with you. I do think that the first sort of critical checkpoint will be Spain, or after Spain, I should say, because yeah, maybe Spain, maybe after Spain is sort of making that decision to see where the drivers are at. If it just keeps yo-yoing between the two, right? If they're just going to exchange P1, P2s or P1, P3s, and they're thereabouts, I think you need to have a sizable difference, right? I mean, I would like for this to be a Rosberg Hamilton kind of season, right? But I don't think that those
They're
two
not.
drivers
They're
are going to
not.
do.
They're
They're
not the
just not
same
the same.
caliber,
They're not
man.
the
It's
same.
just
They're not the same.
and also McLaren doesn't have
Well,
the advantage that the Mercedes had between 2014 and 16. Right? Like
true.
in those three
But
seasons, they were just so much further
yeah,
ahead than everybody else. Like 2016 was probably the most dominant season for one team there has been in decades. So
yeah,
they didn't
yeah. No,
have anybody else to fight against.
but this is what I'm saying, right? This could be a pretty boring championship if it's just between the two McLaren drivers. Like we really need Max to be in the mix, or dare I say,
Or
maybe even one of the
George,
Ferrari
or
guys, or
Charles,
George.
or
Yes,
Lewis,
yes.
and where I mean we're going to come to this, but we might as well say it now. I thought one of the things that Martin Brundle said in comms. I listened to Sky F1 this weekend because I have no choice.
Boo.
I have no choice. Martin was talking about the fact that you have on one end of the spectrum you have the old hands, Lewis, Fernando. On the other you've got the absolute young guns like Kimi and Gabby Bortoletto. But in the middle you've got this really strong
Huge.
tranche of like mid-20s drivers at the peak of their powers
Yeah.
in competitive cars, all going hammer and tongs against each other. And what I'd like to see is all of these guys every race having a shot at it.
Shot
Yeah, like I don't necessarily need to see like four teams in it, and sort of swapping who's got the advantage race by race by race. I want them all to have the advantage at every race, so that it really does come down to how these drivers perform. And we're in a golden age right now of
really
Formula
are.
One drivers. Like there's no denying that they're really really good. But before we get all nostalgic, there's still some bad stuff that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think Ferrari in general, Lewis in particular, needs a bit of a conversation. But let's talk about your mate Charles first. How
Why
did
is it
you
in the bad?
process?
Why isn't it a bad conversation? Are you kidding me? This was probably Ferrari's best race of the season. What are you talking about? I mean, look, Charles did. Look, man, Charles is falling into George of last year, right? Charles has now become George essentially. We're like, give him a car, and he drove a great
TBD, right?
race, Shez.
TBD.
Yeah, TBD on the World Championship aspirate. Poor guy. He's been 7 years with Ferrari. I mean, good God. I'm about to like start a free Charles campaign at the middle of the season now. I mean, Charles had the great race. I think the new floor really helped what he's doing with the car, and clearly he has an advantage having been with the team for a while and have understood all of the what should I say, the oddities with Ferrari and the way they do things in general or otherwise. I mean, still a little bit questionable on the pit strategy. I think that a podium was possible, because Charles did want to not go on the hard tires, and they kind of did put him on the hard tires when he did. There was the infamous exchange, if you're doing the which is they wanted to go plan. Good God, man. They need to, with the alphabetical plans, like this is just the dumbest thing I've seen ever. Like they've come up with. Then Charles says, I want to do plan Delta. Like, it's just like, good God, what are you guys doing? Like, you know what? Just a sidetrack, like Ferrari, guys, just say it out loud. Who gives a bleep? Nobody gives a bleep about your strategy. Instead of doing plan A, plan B, like you have some really, cooked up top secret idea that's going to be earth shattering in any way. Like, just say the thing. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Anyway, uh, overall, Charles did a great job. Man, Lewis also, I kind of put him in the Lando Norris. Yes, he struggled on Saturday, but to come to P5 from P9, that was pretty good. I mean, he did about as good as he could for being with the team. And Chez, to your point, I did watch a clip of Brundle talking about it's almost much more difficult for a seasoned veteran to change teams and unlearn what they've learned before and relearn something new versus to just be a rookie to kind of come in. And I know you can debate it the other way, but I think clearly you're seeing evidence of that struggle happening. I mean, even Carlos has had a little bit of a struggle to himself. So I'm not like, but for Lewis, I think the expectation, what I didn't like, Shez, and I think this is probably where you're going with, is I don't like to hear a dejected Lewis Hamilton. Like when, and his comments on Saturday were, ew. I mean, if Ferrari are going to pick a driver, they ought to pick the young guy. I'm just going to say it, guys. Sorry.
Um, we'll come back to Lewis in a second, but I do want to talk about Charles a little bit and Ferrari's strategy. I like the fact that Charles was trying to call strategy from the car. That's something that we've said that he should do. I didn't have a problem with the letters. They clearly both understood what they were talking about. But Charles was wrong. Like there's no two ways about it. In
He
terms
could
of,
have finished on the softs. He would have been he would have been fine.
yeah,
They
but
struggled on the hards.
yeah. But that was so okay. There's a difference between a dodgy strategy and a gamble. So George, who did go onto the softs at the safety car, took a big gamble, and even he in the car said, "What did he say? Softs for the rest of the race. This is audacious, right?
Audacious, yeah.
Right. So,
But it's a positive thing, though.
And even if Lando was sitting there going, "Oh yeah, he'll be fine," it was a gamble, and he drove a really good tyre management stint to be able to finish on the podium. But I don't think it was necessarily the wrong thing to do for Ferrari to go onto the hard tyres. It's just because of they had like another 20 odd laps to do on a high degradation circuit. So I can understand why they went onto the hards. It's just that as Lewis Hamilton said as they went out, this tyre sucks.
Yeah, and they knew that because they had
they did know that, but I think they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think if the safety car hadn't happened and they'd been able to play out the strategy that they had wanted to do, which was with their offset, they have a shorter final stint, but it's on the softs. Yeah. Then I think you would have seen.
You had a shot there. Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, I'll walk some of my criticism back because you're right. The safety car happened at the worst possible time for them, given their strategy. I would say though that strategically the error was made. What is the day that they actually picked tires? Is it before qualifying or on Friday? And whatever it is,
they can pick them.
They could have kept them
on the grid, can't they? They can turn up with whatever they want.
No, I mean, what do they have in the back, right? Because they should have saved some mediums. I mean, they should have done that.
Yeah, but they were struggling to get through. Through the.
Yeah, I know.
So
the first stint was,
isn't it?
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, first stint was on mediums, though. There you go. So.
Yeah, and I thought that I actually didn't think it was a bad idea. I thought actually this is a play for a win. That's what they were trying to do, and it could have worked out if the safety car hadn't happened. But you don't know.
No, it's not a Ferrari bad though, Shez. To your point, I mean, it's actually
bad.
Ferrari very, very good. Actually, best Ferrari.
But the reason it's not so great is because both the drivers had some issues, right? So Charles, I thought Charles had a great weekend, like absolutely top notch, stellar Charles Leclerc weekend. But even he said, look, the upgrades have worked. I can drive the car how I want. We're just slow. We don't have the pace to catch the Mercedes or the McLarens a bit further up. So actually that's the problem that Ferrari have got. And despite an upgrade, there's still, yes, the car's maybe a bit easier to drive. Even Lewis was a bit happy with the balance. He said, look, it's doing what I wanted to do. I just don't have the pace myself. But that's something that is going to need to come over the next few races. Charles himself, I do want to talk about this because you talked about Lando not being able to get past George, and I've seen a few tweets where people have said, "Oh, Lando's much better than Charles because of the way that he got past him." Yeah, but it took him 3 attempts to do it.
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't put Lando.
I thought his
above
racecraft was like, yes, he put on some good passes, but it's like he had 3 stabs at every pass to be able to get past the driver, and he couldn't get past George in the end either. So actually, I thought, from an entire weekend point of view, Lando didn't perform in qualifying, and his racecraft wasn't there either. There isn't much to sing about. Whereas Charles, actually, in a car that fundamentally is not as quick as the McLaren, is not as quick as the Mercedes, actually put himself in a position to contend. good tyre management, kept the pace up, kept Lando behind him for as many laps as, I guess he possibly could. I thought good bloody race from him.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Shez. He did some really excellent defending if you had the chance to see it, which by the way, the F1 TV coverage is really, really bad with like covering all these sort of action things. We should talk about it some other time. But um you should be thanking me, Shez, for George Russell being able to keep P2 because had Charles not defended Lando the way he did, it is possible that Lando would have caught on to George a lot earlier and would have had enough laps. I
Why
mean,
am
you
I
can
thanking you? Like
because you're a Russell fan. I mean, you're Russellite. You established him as the greatest after defeating a seven-time world champion last 3 seasons.
it's
So
pretty handy.
that's
He is
it.
pretty handy.
Again, that's what I'm saying. You should thank me. You should thank me because had Charles not put on the kind of defense he did for I think two and a half, 3 laps, whatever it was.
I thank Charles then, surely.
Yeah, there you go. You should do you should do that. Look, I think Shez, I don't know. I mean, we can talk about Ferrari too in general, but I am sincerely hopeful. And oh, good, somebody pinch me. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm sincerely hopeful that they can make the car go quicker. If they figured out their balance issues and whatnot, if they can put the tires in the right window, which seems to be the thing for this championship anyway. I am more optimistic on Charles' side. I'm not as optimistic on Lewis's side because I think again some of the things that we said about Lewis coming into the season have kind of come true. But I think Charles has really found a direction with the car. And by the way, Charles himself said that Bahrain was not going to be the race where the new floor would have kind of given a full indication of the performance. He said it would actually be Jeddah. So let's see. But whoa, am I going to start believing again? I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not sure this season. I certainly don't think like putting all your eggs in one basket or the other is necessarily the thing to do right now when you don't actually have the pace to contend anyway. But I do want to talk about Lewis because that was the other not so great thing about the weekend. As you said on Saturday, really dejected, really monosyllabic. It was not particularly fun to listen to, and it sounded like I don't mind Formula One drivers wearing their hearts on their sleeves, and Lewis is certainly a driver that does that. You can tell when he's upset. You can tell when things are not going his way. I don't even mind Lando Norris doing it. You'll note that I didn't have a problem with him doing himself down. I don't do it if that's what makes you better. Do it, but I know from experience that that's not what makes Lewis better. Talking about his foibles has never been a way to make him a faster driver, and you can even hear in some of the interviews that when an interviewer says, look, you're having trouble coming to terms with this car, and he shuts them down even now and says no, it's not that, this is the actual problem. But it started now more recently in the interviews that he's doing, certainly from 24 and 25, much more in a way where he is being much more down on himself, and that is a change for me, and it's not the way Lewis Hamilton has presented himself in the past. But he was much more effusive, I thought, after the race. There was much more positivity. I think he felt he'd had a better race, and he said this. He said, sometimes I think we all get stuck in our ways and I'm very stuck right now, and I need to keep driving the way I'm driving and make the car come to me, but it's not working. So I'm adjusting myself now to the car. And Fred said something similar. He said, look, we'll work on the car and adapt the car to Lewis, but he also has to do a step. And then he said some stuff about staying calm and not rushing to conclusions, which I think is also true. But there is a two-way process. I'm going to do another bit of telemetry quickly because this is where I think that comes into the fore. So I had a look at how Lewis had been driving this track last year in the Mercedes and how he's driving the track this year. I'm not going to do that overlay, but you'll just have to take my word for it that his inputs are very, very similar. And you can understand what he's trying to do. His high energy approach. So I'm now looking at turn 9 and 10. This is that awful tightening left-hander that leads onto the back straight where you get a bit of DRS. So this is Charles versus Lewis. In the white you've got Lewis, in the red you've got Charles. And what Lewis does is that there's a lot of overlap of brake and throttle on the way in, right? So he's balancing the car off the throttle, but he brakes really hard and he keeps the brake on for ages. He has it on for the entirety of the corner, um, and he prioritizes, I think, shedding that speed into the corner and then being able to, with a lower minimum speed, being able to apply the throttle harder so he gets a better exit. It does help him out because actually down the straight he's a bit quicker, but his minimum speed isn't quite as good. That might work, in certain circumstances that might work, but it's not working for him right now. And Charles is exposing that. He was 6/10 faster over the course of this lap, and this corner highlights a little bit why he does that. Charles is much more delicate on the way in. There's less of an overlap on the way in. He has the brakes on for much less, a shorter period of time, and the throttle is never completely off. He's always balancing the brake against the throttle through the middle of the corner as well. And then there's a much more progressive application of the throttle at the exit as well. And when you see what that looks like on the speed trace, you can see that his minimum speed, the lowest his speed gets to in that corner, is slightly higher than what Lewis does. And again, you'll have to believe me, but into the other slow corners of the track, the same thing happens. And you can see what happens to the delta. There's a big spike. Lewis gets further away from Charles in the middle of that corner. And you do that for every corner, slow corner, fast corner, whatever, medium speed corner on this track. And that just gets compounded and you end up with a 6/10 gap. And that is the thing that I think where Lewis talks about having to change his style a little bit. That's what he's talking about. But it's dangerous, Ammar. Like I would much rather he perfects what he is doing, and yes, there will be a bit of an adjustment. He does have to do something that addresses the quirks of the car. But when you start to fundamentally change your driving style, that's when you become Daniel Ricciardo in a McLaren. And that's what I don't want to see.
That's exactly what I was going to get to, Shez. And what Lewis Hamilton. So there are three things, Shez, from everything that you said. One, Lewis Hamilton generally sounds like he doesn't have it, and I don't mean that he doesn't have it. He just sounds like it when he has those lows. So I just want to again emphasize that I'm not suggesting that he doesn't have it, but it's in the way he communicates at times that suggests to me that he doesn't think he has it, right? And that's what the Saturday comments say. Number two, we have talked about Lewis struggling with this rule set, right? In these cars in particular, right? And this is kind of carried on, right? It has just been something that's been there throughout, to your point about what he's been doing in Mercedes the last few years. He's doing no different at Ferrari, and I would not expect him to do anything any different at Ferrari because you come in with what you know. You are who you are. And that leads me to the third thing, which is now he is up against, as we've talked about before, he is the older statesman alongside Fernando Alonso. And I mean, Fernando's not relevant in terms of any championship aspiration, so putting him aside. But you're looking at this sort of heavy core of, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lando Norris, Oscar. Those are just five drivers right there, Shez. And so he is losing out to these guys. And this is what leads me to fear whether he's going to have success or not, right? And I don't want to kind of get carried away in the moment, but this is a microcosm of what this issue is. And this is why I don't think this year is for him, because it's not something he can overcome in time to put up a fight with the two McLarens and Max. It's just not going to happen. So I felt look, Shez, I think what the other thing that suggests to me in terms of reading his body language, and I'm no expert there, is that it started off by Lewis kind of set expectations low by saying, look, I'm just trying to get acquainted with a new team, new car, blah blah blah, new language, all of these things, right? Communicating with the engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And then he got that sprint win, right? And it created this bit of mirage. And I think that created a pep in his step. Although good thing he got that win, but that created this sense of expectations. And now you're kind of seeing that fall back to reality a little bit. And that's what his words suggest to me. I'm not saying that that's actually the case. I'm just saying that his words and Fred's words also say, because Fred is right. Lewis has got to make that step. And the reality is Ferrari also have to, they've got Lewis for a couple of years only. And there's going to have to be some young drivers that are coming through the scene where they're going to have to make some decisions soon. So it's not a decision that needs to be made now, but there's going to be an eye towards the future too.
Yeah, this is the reason why the dejectedness gets on my nerves so much. He actually hasn't been that bad.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he's a second off Charlotte and out in Q1. It's he's got a car he can work with. He just needs to work with it. And being all down and out about it after qualifying, I think is actually doesn't do justice to how well actually he has done in the first couple of races. But anyway,
why do you think he's doing that, Shez? You followed him his entire life. Why do you think he's doing it? Where have you seen this before?
I like to me, it's not actually it's not the worst sign ever that he's clearly come into Ferrari. Not all of the people that said that he's turned up to Ferrari just because he wants a fat paycheck and he wants to say that he's driven for Ferrari. That demeanor to me says, nah, I'm here because I want to win. And I'm not happy when I don't win. I'm not happy when I'm this far off my teammate. I will do what I need to do to get further up to improve my performances. And that fills me with a bit of hope. I just don't. I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it.
So I want to ask you something else too. I know he's never going to answer it this way, but do you think there's a little bit of a thought behind his mind, seeing his successor and his what past teammate having a lot more success than the team that he is in now? I mean, there's a little bit of an element of being in the right place at the right time. Do you think that kind of mentality creeps in at all? Do you think that plays on his mind? It's just too soon for it. No,
I don't think so.
I mean, George is basically fighting for race wins. I know they're far off than McLaren, but he is fighting for race wins.
But that was always going to be a risk that Mercedes finally understand what they need to do in the final year of this rule set. But
Ferrari have yet to do that.
But there was so much push from Mercedes that I don't think he can be unhappy with the choice that he made, because actually he didn't have much of a choice. If he'd stuck around at Mercedes this season, he might have had a stronger season, but there's no guarantee of that. And at the end of it, he wouldn't have a contract because they'd want Kimi Antonelli in that car.
Whoa!
And he'd be scrabbling for a seat somewhere. So no, I don't think it was much of a choice. He had to go somewhere, and I think he's made the right choice. Anyway, right. We need to talk about the ugly, and that is Red Bull. Talk to me, man. What the heck?
I don't know, Shez. I have more questions, right? I mean, we are, I will say this, man. The funniest thing for me is watching on social media saying Red Bull have had an emergency meeting. We had that like 2 weeks ago, no? Like there was a meeting before that. Like, good God, Red Bull, get a meeting sponsor. You guys have heard of Zoom? Maybe try that. Like everyone say, maybe get a subscription while you're at. Kidding. By the way, Zoom, if you're wanting to sponsor the show, come on in. So I don't know, Shez. We're a week removed, right, from praising Max and praising Red Bull for getting the car in the right window, being synchronous, yada, yada, yada. All these platitudes now. And then all of a sudden, it's a big, giant dud. Like, can you tell me if you actually expected to see what you saw? Like, I don't know. I have questions. I'm confused. I'm confused how you can go from being P1 and winning the race, comprehensively last week to like, did Max finish 7th or 8th? I don't even know. Like, it didn't, like, what did he finish? P7? Whatever. Like, it just didn't even, I don't think I saw Max except for the stupid pit stops. They couldn't even get over that, but that was hardly their issue, right? I mean, I don't know how to explain it. You tell me. You're much more knowledgeable at this stuff than I am. I just don't understand how they can go from there to there. Like, it's just crazy.
P6. I had to look it up as well.
P6. Good.
It was so ignorant.
It felt like 16,
it was
but
it was so anonymous in the end. And it would have been P7 if he hadn't taken Gasly on the
that's right,
on the
last
final lap, right? I mean, there's a few different things going on here, right? The race have done a fun little analysis of it, but it comes down to the fact that you had a high degradation track this weekend compared to Japan, where actually the tyres didn't degrade at all. So if you stuck it on pole in Japan, you could get your tyres to work just enough to get you the front row of the grid, and you had that benefit of clean air, then actually your tyres weren't going to fall apart. And Max had enough in him to bridge the gap between what the car wanted to do and what the car had to do in Japan, but he just didn't have that here. And part of it was because I think they were finding that the rear tyres were just going off by the end of a lap, let alone the end of a stint. So they needed to protect them a little bit. They added a bit more downforce to the rear of the car, and the payback for that is that you get horrendous understeer. You want to see some more telemetry? I've got some. So this is Piastri versus Verstappen, Q3. In blue, you've got Verstappen. In papaya, you've got Piastri. Obviously papaya.
Neat.
This is the again 5, 6, 7, 8 sequence. So again, you have one braking moment into a high speed chicane, and then you slow down hard for a big stop into turn 8. And look, there's a couple of things that should stand out here. The first is into turn 5. The first braking moment, Max really has to settle the car on the brakes. Like, he just can't get the car turned in properly, and he's having to scrub speed off. If you've ever done a track day or driven a car, you'll know that the best way to tuck your car into the corner is to either have a big lift off the throttle, which he does, or have a big stab on the brakes, which he does, and that just tucks the front of the car in. But he's having to do that, and doing that scrubs speed. So he has the brakes on much longer than Oscar does. And again, when you get into turn 8, this is the big dip in the speed trace. Look how much more speed Oscar carries into that corner. He's just got so much more confidence that the car's going to turn in and not just veer wide of the corner. He's able to brake much later, come off the throttle much later than Max is. Whereas Max is having to do that, tuck it in again, come off the throttle for much longer, be on the brakes for much longer, and then apply the throttle much more tentatively than what Oscar is doing, because his car just isn't gripping at the front, and that's being compounded across every corner of that track, which leads to a how big is it? Was like a 7 or 8 tenth difference in pace across that lap. But it's just because there was no front end in that car. Go on.
But how can it be this drastic? I'm not disagreeing with anything that you're saying, but how can it be this drastic? I mean, they were within 1,000 of each other in Japan, like the top 3, right? When they qualified, like, I don't know, it's just very minimal, right?
Japan,
and then now
Japan doesn't have the same sort of corner configurations. It didn't have the track
agreed
that was as aggressive as this track, and Max was able to. Max had a car that would allow him to do the things that he needed it to do because of the configuration of the track and the lower degradation. You didn't have that in Bahrain.
So explain to me what I should do to analyze this. What do you say?
I think the pattern.
So what is it? Car is great, or the driver's not good enough? Which one is it? Like, because we gave Max props for saying he dragged an underperforming car that should have been nowhere close to pole in Japan to be on pole. So now what is it? Like, I'm just asking, guys. I don't know.
Ultimately, you can only do what your car can do, right? You can't cheat physics. And
so we're gonna blame the car now. I see.
But I'm always blaming the car. I'm always blaming the car. You're the one that, when we're talking about George Russell, saying he's not good enough because he hasn't won any races. Even though
we're not talking about Russell, man. Come on.
But that's where this comes back to. I do. But the thing with the thing that you've got here is, look, if you stick that Red Bull on a circuit like Japan, where you have high speed corners and you have extreme low speed corners, but none of the medium speed corners, and you have a track that doesn't degrade your tires, if you find another track like that, and there will be more on the calendar, Max will be in the picture again, right?
It's not that many of those, though.
But if there are, he did pretty well in China, sort of, as well, didn't he? Like, he kept it in China because, again, you had a resurfaced track that didn't degrade too much. So actually, he was able to rebuff the advances of the guys coming at him, other than George Russell. But you're only going to see that now, I think, in tracks like that. But ultimately, like, even if he had sacrificed the race, right, and dialed in a flat rear wing with no downforce and gave himself the front end bite that he wanted, yes, he might have qualified higher up the grid. His race would have been absolutely destroyed though, because he just wouldn't. The rear would have just slid around everywhere. You could see it on the onboards, even when he was on the mediums and on the softs in the first stint, that as soon as he applies the throttle, he's having to correct. If you don't have rear downforce on that track, your tires are shot.
Yeah. But Shez, so explain to me what's happening in that emergency meeting you called of all the Red Bull management. What are you telling them? Are you firing somebody or no? Because why on earth are you having an emergency meeting? Why?
This is what's so amusing. They have a driver revolving door, but they don't seem to have a technical director revolving door.
They don't have anyone left.
Well,
everyone's gone.
They do have a junior team.
Oh, okay. So what, he's sending Max to weak carb? Is that what we're doing now?
Not talking about drivers, like I said, but
okay.
Why can you not swap the technical directors around?
I have no idea who's is it Lauren's the team principal? No,
Jody Eggington, isn't it? Jody Eggington.
So is it Pierre Vacher or is it Pierre Wash now? Which one is it?
Oh, I'm not going to get into that. But
clearly, this is that meeting, Shez. What are you talking about? What are they discussing?
But ultimately, this is very tongue-in-cheek. You're not going to change your technical director in the middle of a season. I think you're
not. It's just, come on, Red Bull, show us.
Absolutely suicidal to do that. But having said that, their problems are twofold now, right? Their pit stops were also a bit of a shambles, and it's probably no coincidence that Jonathan Wheatley is down the pit lane at Sauber. Everyone has said, "Oh, you're not going to miss Jonathan Wheatley." Well, this is the proof of the pudding, and you're having to have an emergency meeting about it. But also on the wind tunnel side, look, Pierre Vacher again after the race was talking about correlation and there's a problem with what we're seeing in the wind tunnel compared to what we're having in the track, and he made some excuses about our wind tunnel is really, really sensitive to temperature change, and that's a problem. Blah 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 blah. You never had those problems when Adrian Newey was around.
I was just going to say that there were no problems the last 3 years. All of a sudden now there are problems now.
Exactly. So as you say, the problem that Red Bull have is not that
watch.
It's not a problem of the equipment that suddenly the correlation is a big problem now and it wasn't before, or that
they don't have answers. They just don't have answers.
Exactly. They don't have answers. They don't have the personnel that have the answers. I don't see a way out for them. And the only thing this leads me to is Max Verstappen is not going to see out the entirety of his contract. But Mercedes are now intimating heavily that George Russell's going to have a 2-year contract. So that leaves only one possible destination, surely.
Yeah, no, hang on, Ferrari. No, kidding. Before you do that, can we just say kudos to Red Bull for making the swap? No, I mean, Yuki did great, man. Circumstances were decided to put it in on P9. That was good. That's good in a race. He was only 10 seconds behind Max, so that's that. Yeah, I agree with you, Shez. I think that there was a report with Ted Kravitz report something about Max Verstappen's manager having a fiery, feisty talk. What are you guys doing? This is an implosion of epic. Shez, again, cannot be understated. We were literally 7 days removed from Max being a race winner to now they're having an emergency. I find that so amusing. Wow. I'm just envisioning what's happening in the meeting, guys. What do we do now? What do we do? We add downforce. What do we do? Let's put a sticker here or something like. What are they actually going to come up with all of a sudden with an emergency meeting? Like what are they?
I'm no aerodynamicist, but they're meant to be being paid the big bucks, and I don't think they're earning their crust at the moment in the aerodynamic.
Why would you say that, Shez? This team has done so well for the last 4 years, right? They've been dominant, right? So how can we just all of a sudden do that? I think that what you're seeing now is, everyone, this is the end of, this formula, and you're seeing everyone's catching up, and everyone's been poached, and this is what success brings also, right? So
like it's no coincidence that Rob Marshall suddenly turns up at McLaren and suddenly look at them, which is why, Aston Martin should be the destination.
Oh, I know. See, again,
Max Verstappen should be going to.
this is your George Homerism coming in there. I guarantee you, you say what you want, but all the rumors, if Max Verstappen is available, he is sure as hell getting there. There's only two things happening. Either Max is retiring or he's going to Mercedes. Ain't no way he's going to Aston Martin. I'm just going to tell you that.
Tell me why.
I mean, we've heard, I mean, if the rumors are true, Mercedes are going to be really successful in this next rule set, right? They seem to have the engine. They seem to have the Aston Martin, big question, man. A lot of big bucks. Adrian Newey's there, right? There is those things, but it's a new team. Like, it's not just one guy that gets it. It doesn't happen overnight.
Max has got time on his hands though. He's still under 30. It's not
but
like
why not go win at Mercedes then? I don't understand why he wouldn't do that.
Because week on week on week, number one, that team is becoming a closed shop. That like all the noises that you hear coming out of Brackley are that it's not going to happen.
Maybe they're trying to lure him in. How do you not know that? Maybe by
sure.
If it is that clear, why isn't the contract signed?
No, I agree.
Sign the contract.
I agree.
What's the point in why drop rumors, Shez, from Brackley if you can go ahead and sign the guy? It's not like he's in another team right now. He's in your office. He's in your room. Go ahead and sign the contract.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But I can only go on what I've been told, what I can read, and that's in reputable sources that George is close to signing a 2-year deal with Mercedes. And as I say, from my point of view, if I'm looking at who's going to be winning championships in the next 3-4 seasons, and that's what Max needs to be looking at. It doesn't need to be in 26. I need to win a championship.
You're pushing Lando out, maybe Zach Brown's going to open the door for a Max Verstappen.
I mean, he should.
Who knows?
I mean, he should. But if that would literally be the most boring formula of all time. If they
Max going to McLaren would be nice.
So dull. He would just run off into the distance and win everything by 30 seconds.
You're just assuming McLaren will continue to be dominating, but they may not be. Mercedes are going to be in the mix, as you just said,
But I think Aston will probably be there. Even if not 26 and 27.
Your obsession with Aston, man.
It's my obsession with Adrian Newey, Andy Cowell.
Why don't you send George there? I don't understand why you're not sending him there.
I'm not a massive George fan. I just need his talents to be appreciated. And that is all I'm doing. Right, Ammar. I think we have gone through the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have talked for 1 hour and 2 minutes. Oh my lord! I told you it was going to be bumper. We'll try and do a few more videos before the next.
We'll be back
race,
on schedule soon.
Yeah, which will be this weekend. As usual, please like, please subscribe if you managed to stay this far. Please leave us a comment. We read every single one. We will reply to as many as we possibly can, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Later.